We're always hearing about how the world is changing faster than ever. But how do we actually know? Well, today we're going to decode 3 brand new studies that do just that. They use some incredible data to map out the new reality of how we think, how we trust, and even how businesses survive. So let's dive right in. And that really is the big question, isn't it? I mean, think about it. From the way we travel to the way companies stay afloat, all the old rule books are kind of being thrown out the window. In this absolute flood of digital change, how do we get a real handle on these massive shifts in human behavior? Well, the answer is hiding in the data. And we're about to walk through some really cutting-edge research that goes way beyond old-school surveys. These studies use powerful new methods to analyze what we actually do, not just what we say we do, to really map out this new terrain. For each one, we're going to break down the big question they asked, the clever methods they used, and most importantly, what it all means for us. Okay, so here's our game plan. We're going to tackle this in 3 themes. First up, the new consumer. Then we'll get into tech adoption and trust, and we'll wrap up with a look at how machine learning is being used to predict the future. All right, let's jump into our first section, the new consumer. The big idea here is that researchers can now learn so much more by analyzing what we do online than by just, asking us what we think. So this first study asks a really, really clever question. We all know people visit religious sites for all sorts of different reasons, right? And here's the cool part, can we figure out those different motivations just by analyzing their public Google Maps reviews? This lets us get past the prepared answers of a survey and into the raw, unfiltered thoughts people share online. So how in the world did they pull this off? Well, it was a pretty neat 4-step process. First, they scraped hundreds and hundreds of public reviews. Then, they did a bunch of pre-processing on that text data to clean it all up. Next, they used something called hierarchical clustering to automatically group similar reviews together. And finally, to really understand the meaning behind each group, they used this super powerful technique called LSA. So what on earth is latent semantic analysis, or LSA? Okay, imagine you have a book club moderator with superpowers. It can read every single review at once and understand the underlying concepts or themes, even if people are using totally different words to talk about the same idea. It's not just counting keywords like beautiful or historic, it's finding the hidden meaning. And that's exactly how the researchers could pinpoint the real motivation behind each cluster of reviews. And here's what they found. It's fascinating. After all that analysis, the reviews didn't just end up in some random jumble. Nope. They clustered into 3 incredibly clear, distinct groups of tourists. Let's take a look at who these people actually are. And when you look at these profiles, the differences are just striking. First, you've got your heritage explorers. They're basically acting like amateur tour guides, sharing facts about history and architecture. Then you have the aesthetes, who are all about the beauty, the sensory experience, that holy atmosphere. And finally, the self-transcendence seekers, who are describing a deep, personal, spiritual experience. The big takeaway here is that the people managing these sites can now stop marketing to some generic tourist and instead tailor everything from their ads to the on-site experience to these 3 very different mindsets they discovered in the data. Okay, let's move on to our second theme, tech adoption and trust. This is all about a really crucial truth. You can build the coolest new tech in the world, but it's useless if you don't understand the human psychology that actually gets people to use it. This next study tackles a topic that is everywhere right now, and it asks a really direct question. In this new, kind of weird world of the metaverse, what actually makes a tourism brand seem cool to people? And maybe more importantly, does that feeling of coolness translate into real-world business? To figure this out, the researchers used a classic psychological framework, the stimulus-organism response model. It's actually a pretty simple but powerful idea. The stimulus, let's say it's an amazing, immersive VR tour of a hotel, influences the internal state of the organism, that's you, and specifically how you feel about that hotel. That feeling, that internal state, is what then drives your final response, like whether or not you actually decide to book a trip there. And the results were crystal clear. Get this. The whole metaverse effect is basically supercharged for people who are already really passionate about travel. For those people, a vivid, immersive virtual experience isn't just neat, it creates this powerful feeling of brand coolness. And that feeling is the absolute key. It's the bridge that turns someone's virtual curiosity into an actual intention to spend their money. This quote from the study just nails the core finding. It shows that for those really engaged tourists, these virtual experiences have a massive impact. Now, for brands, this isn't just some academic theory. It's a super clear roadmap. It tells them, aim your best, most immersive virtual experiences at your biggest fans, because that's where you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck. All right, on to our third and final theme, predicting the future. Here we're going to look at how researchers are shifting from just understanding the present to actually forecasting outcomes that, not too long ago, we thought were completely unpredictable. So here's the research question, and honestly, it could not be more relevant today. Can modern machine learning algorithms do a better job of predicting which companies are going to go bankrupt compared to the older statistical models? And this is the critical part. Can they still do it when a massive, totally unexpected shock like the COVID-19 pandemic just blows up the global economy? To test this, the researchers basically set up a head-to-head competition. In one corner, you've got the classic method, logistic regression. Think of it like a seasoned detective who's been around for decades and follows a very strict set of rules. And in the other corner, you have modern machine learning models, like random forest. These are more like a whole team of high-tech investigators who can spot all these complex, hidden patterns that the old rules would just completely miss. And the results? Well, they really speak for themselves. The machine learning model was just flat out more accurate. Now, I know what you're thinking. A 4 or 5% gap might not sound like a huge deal. But in the world of finance, where literally millions of dollars are on the line, being able to correctly predict which companies will fail an extra 5% of the time, that is a massive, massive advantage. But here's the wildest part of the whole study. The researchers wondered what would happen if they actually fed the model data that represented the chaos of the pandemic. In this case, a sudden, sharp drop in a company's operating expenses. And totally counterintuitively, adding that real-world uncertainty actually made the model smarter. It's incredible. It shows that these advanced models don't just work when the world is stable. They can actually learn from the chaos. Okay, so let's zoom out for a second and connect all the dots. What's the big picture here? What story emerges when we look at all three of these studies together? The single thread linking all of this research is a fundamental shift in how we find answers. We're moving beyond just asking people for their opinions and into this whole new era of sophisticated data analysis. We're using the digital breadcrumbs that we all leave behind to understand and even predict human behavior, with an accuracy that's honestly a little startling. So to wrap it all up, what are the three huge lessons here? First, if you really want to know what consumers are thinking, maybe don't ask them. Watch their digital footprints instead. Second, new tech doesn't win just on features. It wins when it connects to a real human feeling, like coolness. And third, the future is actually becoming more predictable because machine learning is giving us this incredibly powerful new lens to see what might be coming next. When you put them all together, these studies show a massive leap forward in our ability to make sense of our world. And it leaves us with one final, really fascinating question to chew on. As our own digital lives create more and more data, and as these amazing analytical tools get even more powerful, what complex human questions will we be able to answer next?